You do still hear me?
I do. Hello?
Hello, hello, can you hear me?
I can still hear you.
You're listening to Digging Star Wars, the online journal of the films that inspired George Lucas to create the Star Wars saga.
Hello, and welcome to this special episode of Digging Star Wars, where we're going to review The Clone Wars, from the movie to the recent Season 3 finale, with the help of our special guest, Joshua Taback.
Hello!
Resounding hello. Some quick notes about Mr. Taback. Besides being a friend of mine for decades, gosh, we're old, he was a character layout artist, second unit director, and or assistant director on more than 30 episodes of the longest-running comedy in television history, the famed animated show The Simpsons. And two of your episodes won Emmys, The City of New York versus Homer Simpson and Homer, H-O-M-R.
Yes, I was not an assistant director on those episodes, but I did work on them. I probably worked on well over 30, I couldn't even count. But as far as assistant director, I think I did 8 or 9. I'd have to actually stop for a minute and count, so don't want to waste the listeners' time.
Yeah, that's right. No math involved. Josh has also acted in a few short films and the award-winning feature film Most High, and he currently works at Fox Animation on Family Guy, so not too shabby. Welcome.
Yes, not shabby. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's get down to business. We have a lot of ground to cover. My quick take on Clone Wars is this. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the writing, and I'm going to ask Josh here to talk more about the animation. Starting with the movie, my entire family saw the movie on opening day, and we loved it. Season 1, which aired shortly after the movie was in theaters over the summer, was a great start writing-wise. They fleshed out the characters and started pretty impressive character arcs and storylines, and they seemed to play around with the timeline, especially concerning the events around Christophsis, which was the planet in the movie, which was kind of annoying, actually, at Season 1. I think they were just trying to patch up what they created and transition well. Season 2, by far, has been the best season to date, with a ton of great episodes. Zillow Beast, Bounty Hunters, The Deserter, Lightsaber Lost, The Mandalore Plot, Senate Spy, Holocron Heist. It goes on and on. It's just a solid season, which I love, but then we got to Season 3, and Season 3 had a really lame first half of the season, which in my opinion was just way too Padme-centric, and the only episode in the first half of the season I thought was any value was The Hunt for Zero. And then the second half of the season, things picked up. They had the Witch Sisters trilogy, which in my opinion was highly overrated. Although a lot of friends of mine, fans of the show, I know, loved it, wasn't really thrilling me. The Mortis trilogy, which starts with Overlords and has 2 other additional episodes on Mortis, I'm going to talk about in another podcast. I did like it. I felt there was really cool stuff going on in those. Then you get to the Citadel trilogy, which was awesome. It was a trilogy with Tarkin and getting him out of the Citadel prison camp. And then the finale, the hour-long finale with Chewbacca, I thought was pretty good. I know that was a blitzkrieg of going through things, but Josh, can you give us a walkthrough on what your thoughts are animation-wise, starting with the film and then through the seasons?
Well, the film was not made for the theater.
Right.
So the animation was much more. It was basically 2 episodes that were put together and released as a film in the theaters. So the quality of it didn't necessarily equal to, say, even Pixar of that day or other movies.
Mm.
But the atmosphere of the movie and the Star Wars world really, I think it really encapsulated the vibe that everyone was sort of waiting for. I think a lot of people liked it, but they felt like it kind of fell a little short as far as sitting in a movie theater for a theatrical experience. From what I know of what they were going for, as you actually told me, a combination of Thunderbirds, which were these very awkward puppets from the 60s or 70s, actually 60s, and Robotech, which was a lot more slick, but still was somewhat limited animation of the 70s and 80s.
Not necessarily just Robotech, anime in general. So if I just to kind of clarify, from what I've heard, I'm definitely going to talk about Robotech later in this podcast, but it wasn't simply Robotech; it was the evolution of anime.
Right. Well, I think Robotech kind of encapsulates what was happening in anime at that time.
Right.
I don't even know if it was called anime back then. A lot of people.
It was. Yeah.
It was?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Me being an animation expert, I kind of. You know, we always called it Japanimation.
Well, that's true. That's true. It's Japanimation.
Yeah. Anywhere in Japan was it called that.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, back to your main question was, I think it did its job, but it was the first 2 episodes of a new show that they were trying out, and they weren't really sure about exactly where it was going. Plus, the technology was only, I'm sure they were only budgeted for, a certain amount before they found out whether it would be successful or not.
Mm.
That being said, I think it did the job. It was simple, but it got the point across. It was atmospheric. The character designs were based on, like you said, once you told me they were based, the show had a lot of Thunderbird influence. The designs really came off that, especially with the eyes and the way they spoke. But also the Gendy Tartikoff Clone Wars cartoon from Warner Brothers. It was definitely, they took a lot of things from that for the design and kind of made it, sort of what Pixar was doing. It's really hit the nail on the head in The Incredibles, where it was a 3-dimensional cartoon. It actually felt like a cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't some realistic-ish type of video game-looking thing. You really felt like it had a lot of character.
Mm-hmm.
And to sum that all up, I think they overshot for what they were capable of in the beginning.
What do you mean by overshot? You mean like they played up the Thunderbirds too much?
I don't think they played anything up. I just think that's what they did. And like I said, it's not a feature quality production.
Gotcha. Yeah, I would agree.
Episodes. And coming off of the Star Wars movies and all the computer animation from Lord of the Rings and all, what have you back then. I have to look at the date and see what came out that year. The animation didn't match up with what they were putting out. Story, atmosphere, and some other word that I can't think of right now.
Right. Sure. Yeah, I agree. How do you think the animation has changed, for better or worse, over the seasons, from season 1, season 2 to this last season?
Well, in season 2, of course, the technology got better. The puppets got better. The virtual puppets, the rigs, which for those who don't know is basically the skeleton inside, the virtual skeleton inside the virtual puppet that is the cartoon character that you see. There's all these, it's like a robot, and everything that moves has a mechanism to it. A mechanism that tells you how much it moves and how little it moves and where it moves and what moves.
Mm-hmm.
And as the years have gone on, those puppets have gotten a lot more complicated. But the second season wasn't a lot more complicated than the first.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what they did, I haven't seen all of the second season. I'm about halfway through. And I actually I'm at The Deserter, which I had seen before. But I popped it in while I was working, and I really got engrossed in it.
It's a good episode.
And the thing that what really struck me is the whole concept of less is more. I've heard a lot of people say that some of the animation on it is blocky, or it's not all that good. I think the action, the physical, the animation for the action is really good. It's a lot like anime, where there's not a lot of movement, not a lot going on, and when things need to move, they move great.
Right.
I did also notice that things do move a little bit like puppets. They're not really trying to give the most finessed performance there is.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it's really pulled back. It's real subtle, and again, I'm searching for a word that I thought of the other day that I can't think of. There are a lot of real subtle, understated. That's the word. I think a lot of the performances were understated. Whether or not that was due to technology or just that the production schedule and the way that, that animation is also shipped out overseas to possibly Korea, maybe Canada. I'm not really sure because I don't work on that show, but it wasn't animated here in America where the director could sit over someone's shoulder and give them a little more direction. I'm not even 100% sure when the voices are done. Usually the voices are done before the animation.
Right.
Sometimes for television, when things are shipped overseas, a lot of the animation gets done, and then the voice artists try to match it. I don't know how this is done. I bet you it's a little bit of both. But the performances are understated, and it kind of draws you in. And if you're really watching, a lot is going on between the voice acting and the subtle performances and the eyes, looking right here. I do think, I can't remember the character's name, but she looks like the actress Tandy Newton. She wears like a headdress. She was the one whose Padawan went in with Ahsoka to develop the Geonosian base.
Right. I know who you're talking about. The name's escaped me.
I think the acting on her, I don't know if it's a combination of the design or of puppet and the actress, but there's a lot going on with her.
Mm-hmm.
And not all that much is moving. You don't need all that much to move as long as it's moving right. And sometimes you make something move too much, it's too much, and it's not believable. It's overacting.
Right.
Less is more.
Right.
You don't need to do a lot if you do it right.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the technology and the production process of a television show didn't quite it doesn't give anyone a lot of room to do superb animation back then, a few years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think the less you do, as long as you do it right, you can get a lot out of it.
Yeah. With your experience in both, The Simpsons now and Family Guy, did you, one of the things that amazes me, and I think with each DVD set that they put out with the first two seasons and hopefully the third season, they're really good about explaining thought process behind why they're choosing not only thematic and story elements in the writing, but and animating, and how they keep repurposing things. Like the wall in one room will be the floor in another, or they develop one character and then they realize, well, we can just clone these. Pardon the pun, but we can just clone these characters for another episode. Did you, from what you've seen from the film season 1 and season 2, and what you've seen of this past season, does it bother you as an animator how much they're doing that?
Doesn't bother me. No, it doesn't bother me. I think it's hidden pretty well.
Yeah.
No animator, there's probably less than 20 animators alive that say, yeah, I love doing crowds. So anytime you can make a crowd easier, a computer animated film is really more akin to a live action film because you're actually building sets.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing an animated film, you can still reuse stuff. Almost every person in a crowd is designed, but it's drawn, and then it's up to whoever the animator gets tasked to draw everybody in that crowd. But every drawing of that person has to look like this model sheet, which is a model sheet is a drawing of a character and exactly how it's supposed to look. And it's the model type, the model that you go by when you're drawing them. Whereas the model in a computer animated program or movie, it's made once, and then that's it. You just move it around. A lot of the rigs nowadays, this will segue into season 3, a lot of the rigs nowadays, Joe Schmo animator out there, who may do rigging for a living or even model building for a living, they're making their own rigs and putting them online for other animators to just use that you can alter and customize so much you would not even recognize it was the same model. You shrink the forehead, you build out the cheeks, you build it vice versa, you make the nose bigger, this bigger, man, woman, everything, tall, fat, thin, So it's amazing the customization that can be done today. Morphe is the model I saw the other day that this guy made. I can't remember the guy. Maybe put it in your show notes. You can just download that rig. You can do a whole film with this one model and just customize it a million different ways. You got 100, different types of people. I guess that would be a million different types of people.
Right.
To go back to what you were saying, traditional animator will try to reuse as much as he can as long as it looks good.
Right.
And on Family Guy, we're actually still drawing, but we're drawing on the computer, which is called on these computer monitors that are touch sensitive, called Cintiq tablets, where you're drawing on the screen, and it's just the information is being relayed into the computer as if it was a mouse. But we're still drawing, and if I got to use the Peter head that I drew a few frames ago, I'm going to copy and paste that and put it in there and just move it a little bit. The Family Guy characters don't move around in 3 dimensions all that much, whereas on The Simpsons, they're still on they're also on the Cintiqs, but they were more traditional, and they're moving the characters around, and we pretty much were doing full-blown animation. We were just not doing as elaborate animation. So we move things around, but reusing stuff in animation is fine.
What did you think of the animation this past season? I think it got better. My opinion is it increased in the quality as the season went on, as you would expect.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts?
Well, Chris, I'll tell you. I happened to start watching a bit of season 3 online, because I did not catch it this season while it aired. So I caught some of it in the middle of me watching season 2. So I immediately saw the difference.
Right.
And it was a noticeable difference. The models were, again, more subtle. I did see that the Anakin and Obi-Wan got rid of their breastplates that were reminiscent of Darth Vader's breastplate.
Right.
That was more of a design thing, but just everything. It was a lot more rich. The puppets were a lot more subtle. The animation was a lot more subtle and soft in a good way.
Right.
It just felt, like I said, it just felt richer. And then as far as the animation itself, again, sort of the same thing. They weren't doing more. I just think the puppets were capable of doing more. The facial features were moving around more when they spoke. Today I just watched the finale, the Wookiee Hunt, and Padawan Lost, the penultimate for the season. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember what they were called, but the boss type characters, boss being the bounty hunter from Empire Strikes Back. Every time they spoke, I mean, everything moved on their face because there were all these scales, and their nose moved, and just everything was moving on them. And it looked great. And the Citadel episodes that I watched, there was still some a little bit blocky-ish, subtle, if you want to call it that, acting and animation that went on. But when it did jump into gear, it was right on. And I just think that what maybe they weren't doing with the animation, the rigs and the puppets actually were doing more than they were before. So overall, it really just felt nice, felt nicer, and it really drew me in. Probably if they're still using the same overseas studios that they are using, or whoever the animation studios are that do, if they're still using the same ones, those guys have been doing it for 3 seasons now. Right. So they know their tricks, and they're doing it, and they know how to get these characters to move right. And I think it was a lot closer. Like that that Padawan Lost episode, I started to get pretty creeped out.
Yeah.
It's pretty violent, which is fine by me. But the music and the colors and the atmosphere and the lizards making all the lizard noises. I was just sitting at my desk watching it with my headphones, and I was getting a little creeped out. So if it's a little TV show, and I'm watching it on the internet, granted full screen, but while I'm eating my lunch, can creep me out like that. I think that's a lot more invasive. I guess that's not the right word, but it gets you a lot more than I think they were doing first season, when they were just like, "Hey, this is Star Wars, isn't it still cool?"
Yeah, right. Well, like you're talking about it, kind of creeped me out. My 8-year-old son sat like a perched bird on the couch, eyes locked to the screen, and nervous as all get out. And I had to do the responsible father thing, like, you okay? You okay? Yeah. It was an intense finale. I kind of felt a little opposite in regards to how the characters moved, based on what you said. I felt Dengar guy.
That was Bosk.
I'm sorry, Bosk. Yeah. See, look at that. Oh my gosh. Talk about ruffling nerd feathers. But I felt their arms moved like the action figures' arms moved back in the 80s. Like they just kind of went up in the air. And
there was a little bit of that.
And even Chewie's movements were a little weird, and I chalk that up to the stylistic choice, again, of, the Thunderbirds inspiration and all that, but it's 3 seasons now, and I'm not saying they should abandon that style, but I wanted to see Wookiee rage in all its glory and with free movement, and
yeah,
I think it fell short of that, movement-wise. But, that's me. That's what I thought.
I did think it went in and out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what made it a little more noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was some good animation, Chewbacca, and the model was really great. And then whatever he was doing was over, and then it kind of went into this sort of slow, stiff sort of animation because it wasn't doing anything important.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that may have to do with production. It's a TV show. I've worked in television for almost 2 decades now. Television animation. There's not a lot of time for bells and whistles.
Right.
Or you got to choose. You only have so many bells and whistles.
Right.
So I think, like I said, the puppets themselves now are doing a lot of the work. I think the animators put in what they can, where they can,
mm-hmm.
and where they don't have time to. At least it's not drawn bad.
Right. I think they're doing a great job. It's the only show that I managed to make time to watch, and it's great that it's a show I can watch with my sons. I think they put a lot of effort into the design of the characters and the environments and the ships and the weapons and whatnot. And I'd like to see a little bit of that energy spent on movement, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Animation is a very specialized talent. And there's a ton of work out there now for CG animators, whether it be video games, TV shows like this, because now a lot of the action shows, they're storyboarded traditionally, hand-drawn, and then like Penguins of Madagascar, for example, or this show. And then it's given to the animation studio, which now animates it computer-generated.
Interesting. I actually want to transition because we're running out of time here.
Okay.
So, one of the other things I want to talk about, first of all, thank you for talking about the animation. It's nice kind of hearing it from an expert as opposed to just, some guy saying, why don't they move their arms better? But one of the things that I want to talk about was the writing. And I think this past season in particular, they took a lot of chances, and I think season 2 was so strong in the writing that this felt like the sophomore slump, in a way. In that first half of the season, I just did not care about Padme after like the 3rd episode of this season. However, I think the thing I want to make about season 3 is that the Clone Wars writers really missed an opportunity in featuring the death of a main character. And it's something that they teased a lot all season long. You felt like Ahsoka was going to die several different times. There was a point where you thought the villain Ventress was down and out and going to die. And they just kept escaping by the skin of their teeth or coming back from the dead, as in the Mortis trilogy. And I know that there were some side Jedis that died this season and earlier seasons, and clones that died off-screen, and some very violent off-screen implied action, very film noir. But with missing Ventress and missing Ahsoka, they just couldn't take that leap, and that bothered me. And, you had mentioned earlier about anime and Robotech in particular, and I think the staff, they have to be aware of Robotech, and if they're not, they should be. I really feel they could have learned a good deal from watching that and how they treated the death of the main character, Roy Fokker, who was a good friend of the main character, Rick Hunter, in the Macross chapter of that. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Robotech, I invite you to learn more about it. But in Robotech, when they dealt with that, they dealt with what war means to the people involved in personal loss and devastation. And they didn't harp on it. It wasn't several episodes of mourning, but it was an effect. It caused an effect. And I feel with Ventress, they have enough villains, and I'm not saying I'm over her, but I don't think it would be a loss if she was no longer part of the show. And Ahsoka is great and very popular, and if in this last finale, in this last episode with Chewbacca, if she had died, after the conversations between Anakin and Plo Koon about what they should do, and they can't abandon her, and can they go after her, and they couldn't, and all this other stuff, that would have been awesome. I really think it would have been awesome. It would have set up Anakin on a great character arc to, where he's eventually going to go in Episode 3. And I feel like the show is moving towards its final season. I'm not going to predict that Season 4 is the last season of Clone Wars, but it certainly feels like it could be. And if it is, and could be, why wouldn't you take that chance? Why wouldn't you do that? And I really am curious if, for those listening to this episode, if they could comment that on the blog, on diggingstarwars.blogspot.com. Please post a comment on my blog regarding that. And I feel because they avoided that, right now, Clone Wars is sort of one step above where G.I. Joe was in the 80s. G.I. Joe, you had the parachutes and everyone escaped death, good or bad, good guys or bad guys. And it's not that bad, because there's certainly casualties in Clone Wars, but they're not committing. And I want to see that commitment of, if we're threatening Ahsoka or Ventress, sooner or later something's got to give. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, since I didn't see the whole season, I'm not aware of who did die.
No, I just ruined it for you.
Well, I'm still not. I just know that the two of them didn't die.
Right.
Or it was
right.
Ventress who died.
No, the Ventress was like, you thought she was going to die, and then she didn't. And then Ahsoka, twice, her life was in jeopardy, and she came out of it.
So did someone die?
They did, but there's side Jedis, like even Keo from Episode 1, or
even that gal in the finale. Was it the finale, or
yes? They brought her in, they killed her. I'd like to see someone that is integral to their world, and I know they can't do things because of who you see in Episode 3.
Yeah, but they could always bring someone in, make you love them, and then off them.
And that's Ahsoka.
Right. Well, I think there's a part of the Lucasfilm world that just doesn't go there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was pretty heavy for especially animated shows that are on TV and even a lot of out in the theaters. I thought that the violence wasn't over the top, but it was heavy enough where it had me engrossed. And I'm pushing 40. Maybe we could all sit and be armchair directors in that way, or writers. I would love it to see something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think again, what are the limitations? What is it set out in the beginning of the season? Say what we can and can't do, will or won't do. I'm sure George laid down some laws.
Mm-hmm.
Just like the technology, I thought some of the acting on a couple of those Lost Padawans, I thought it was good, but I thought some of the facial acting looked like it was trying too hard, but it didn't work. And I think part of it was the animation rig wasn't capable of making the face expressive enough.
Right.
So an animator has to compensate and either push that as much as he can, or maybe act more with the body. A good animator just knows how to make a subtle performance. Same thing with writing. Well, if we can't do this, let's at least do what we can really well.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I saw, I only saw 4 or 5 episodes. I really liked it. I thought it had a lot of richness to it. Even the stuff with I did think, as far as if you want to pick on or focus on any writing critiques, which I think is what you're trying to get out of me.
Mm-hmm.
When Grand Moff Tarkin, or whatever rank he was,
Captain.
What was that?
Captain. He was Captain Tarkin.
Captain Tarkin on the Citadel episodes. There was a lot of leading banter between him and Anakin that was a little forced, I thought.
Yeah.
Kind of expositional, and it was very like, oh, this is for the Star Wars fans. He's referring to this, and that's referring to that, and he knows something, and it was good that it was there, but I felt it was kind of like, the record player stopped, and then here's some of this, and then the record players went back on.
Right. I think they're trying to lay down groundwork for future episodes.
Yeah. And plus, I'm a geek of all geeks, but I cannot stand the little quotes from them, like, don't get cocky, or, I got a bad feeling about
Oh,
this.
really? That's interesting.
It's too much. I mean, every so often, but it's kind of like, well, the way they say it like they said it in the original trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who said it in the original trilogy, there was only one person spoke that way. It's like not everybody speaks with...
Right, not everyone's Han Solo.
Right, not everyone's on Solo.
Right.
I don't think he said that. Who said I got a bad feeling about this? Yeah, he did say that.
He
but
did.
Luke said it also.
Luke said, yeah. There's one character in each movie says it.
Yeah, but it's a bit much.
Right.
I guess if you're not really paying attention and you're not so much of a savant, then it's just dialogue.
Right.
But they got a lot in there, and I'm looking forward to owning the whole series someday.
I want to thank you for your time and for being part of this review of Clone Wars. It's great to get your insight from the animation world.
Thank you. Anytime. It's a joy being here.
And I hope that you and our other listeners come back for our next episode. We're going to continue to explore the Clone Wars, in particular the Mortis trilogy, which we talked about earlier from Season 3, and its ties to the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel Housemaid of Dawn by N. Scott Momaday. I know it sounds far-fetched, but I hope you listen and come back and see what we have to say about that. Again, Josh, thank you very much for being here.
Digging Star Wars is produced by Mitch Media and has no connection to Lucasfilm Limited whatsoever. Copyrights for films, trademark characters, and related materials discussed in Digging Star Wars remain with their respective owners. For a list of references or source material, please send an email to diggingstarwars@gmail.com.